Howdy, everybody! Koricon here, and I am joined by very special guest, Ray Hannisian. Wow, and I had it right before we started filming, didn't I? But thank you very much, Ray, for joining me. I was really surprised when you contacted me that you were in Colorado. You know, my state.
No place I'd rather be, actually.
Yeah, and you're only about 3.5 hours away from me.
Right.
So for those of you that don't know, Ray was the lead stereographer on 2.0. Some people may not know what stereography is. It's basically being able to film for 3 dimensions. You're replicating what the eyes can see. How did you get into stereography? I mean, it's a very specific type of photography.
It is. I had a ViewMaster when I was a kid, like most people. And I always enjoyed them. Yeah, a little round disc. However, it was only 1971 when I was in Korea that I discovered that ViewMaster not only made the reels and the viewers, they also made a camera that made it possible for you to take 3D pictures yourself. And that inspired me. I was already a photographer and interested in various aspects of photography. And while traveling in London in 1976, I managed to find my first 3D camera. Most of them are from the 40s and 50s. There was a big run from Kodak and Veriscope, and lots of different available formats of 3D from the 40s and 50s. And then a rather unique little camera made in Italy that had better lenses than the 40s and 50s. But that's the reason I chose it, plus its small form factor. So I transferred my love of photography into 3D photography. And shortly after that, shortly from the 70s to the 90s, I shot still images. There was no internet when I first started, and I didn't know anybody else who had an interest in the same hobby. When the internet finally appeared and I started seeing there's a lot of people out there doing this, it re-sparked my interest. And then in the early 90s, I think it was 91, I bought my first video camera. And after using it for one project, I decided there's got to be some way to make video be 3-dimensional as well. So initially, I looked out to build my own 3D video system. And at the time, it would have cost me over $100,000 to do it with the pieces that were available.
Yeah.
And yet, in 1992, just a year later, Nintendo had tried and failed at launching a game in Japan that used stereoscopic imaging and a pair of shutter glasses, which are liquid crystal lenses that alternately obscure and open to an image that's on the screen. So the first system I built, and by the way, with the surplus, that dropped the cost of this system down to closer to $20,000. And one day I went to my wife and said, I have this idea, something I really want to try. But we're going to have to mortgage the house to do it. I want to build I called it a virtual reality recorder because I didn't know what to call it. And I said to her, I'd like to invest that money and mortgage the house. And she said, okay. That's the wife I have who is largely responsible for me realizing a lot of my dreams. But once we found out that there was surplus equipment in the field, particularly for the playback, what happens is standard cathode ray tube television is made of fields. One is the odd number lines followed by the even number lines. And by using a multiplexer that would switch between my left and right cameras as the fields changed, I could get all the odd number lines for one eye and all the even number lines for the other eye. Oh, and even though it was kind of like looking through an electric fan at 60 hertz, it was possible to make 3D images.
Wow. I like the idea of that, where you film one of the lines for one camera and one. That's got to be. Was it difficult to synchronize that recording?
Well, as long as you have cameras that can be gen locked.
Okay.
then there's no problem. As long as the signals are running off the same clock and the multiplexer, which combines the left and right image into alternate fields, as long as those are all synchronized to a gen lock, then it's possible to do it without too much difficulty.
And so after that, where did you go from there?
Well, as soon as I finished building my camera, and it took about 6 months of taking the entire living room floor, and there were wires running everywhere. There were things hanging on hooks all over the place. And I finally fit it into a backpack. And that was the time in our life when our kids had grown up and gone off to either school or their own life. And my wife said, I've been doing a lot of maintenance for other people for an awful lot of our life. I want to spend a year traveling. So we rented out our house. We quit our jobs. I took my camera. We got in a Toyota 4Runner, and we drove for a year through Mexico, Belize, and Guatemala, documenting our entire trip in 3D.
Wow. I would love to do something like that. Just pack up. Ever since I was probably a teenager, I've always wanted to get a big van that I would retrofit to have like a bed in it. And I have a friend that's doing that right now. I'm kind of jealous of him. And then just drive around.
That's what we did.
That's awesome.
And at the end of a year, at close to a year, we said, well, should we keep going? Are we heading to Tierra del Fuego? And we decided, we've been on the road a while. I'd like to see the footage I shot. I'd like to see if it has any commercial value. So we timed our trip to arrive home 1 year after we left.
And how did it turn out?
Well, the footage got me a job at a company on the East Coast that was just developing eyewear for watching 3D images. And they hired me to edit all of the material I shot during my year on the road. And that became my first job for a 3D company.
And that was a lot more sophisticated than the red and blue glasses.
A lot more comfortable too. Yeah. All you really need to do is to isolate the left and right image so you can present the discrete image to each eye. And color anaglyph does that, but there's a certain discomfort that comes with that after a while.
And what were they doing for what you were developing with that company? What kind of way of separating the eyes?
These were wireless shutter glasses. Okay. And they worked with both computer images and television images. So I was hired as the content developer for these projects.
Because I think, isn't it right now the glasses they use like circular polarization?
Well, actually, any movie you make in 3D can be shown in any format. The most common out there is Real D theaters use circular polarized lenses and a screen that alternates between the left and right image much faster than 60 hertz now. It's about 144 hertz, so you don't see the flicker. And also to retain polarization, you need a silver screen. So theaters had to become digital, first of all, which didn't happen until about 2008, 2009, when I was working on the U2 3D project. There were only at the time 250, I think, 3D capable theaters in the world. Now, I think I posted online that 2.0 is about to be released in China on 47,000 3D screens. Yeah. So things have come a long way. But on the other side of that, it's also, there's a company, Dolby, who is known for their audio sweetening. That they've developed a very sophisticated anaglyph format. Oh, I've got a visitor in my studio who wants to be in the interview.
Oh, my cat's behind me, asleep on the floor.
So it's possible to show that. You could show it in anaglyph. Dolby glasses are a very sophisticated kind of anaglyph that chooses very narrow frequencies of the different primary colors and isolates them. Dolby, I don't want to disparage anybody's technology, but the reflections that come off of it, you can see your own eyes looking back at you. The fact that it is anaglyph and there is a difference between your left and right eye color values, that becomes annoying for me. I prefer the polarized as the way to show it in theaters.
Yeah, when I saw it in 2D, when I saw 2.0 in 3D, I'm mixing my numbers, but when I did, I went and saw the real 3D. I also like the circular polarization. I think it feels smoother. I don't have to concentrate as hard. You know, I remember
it's less effort.
Yeah, less effort. And
especially Did you see it in Aurora, by the way.
I'm sorry?
Did you see it in Aurora?
Yeah, I went to the theater in Aurora, the Century 16.
Right. That's where I went to see it about 2 days after you did.
Oh, okay.
Very nice theater. Very well presented on that screen. Yeah. Good experience.
Yeah, I liked that screen. The Harkins Theater has a good one. I think they use real 3D as well. But they didn't, the one at Harkins Theater, they didn't post their show times until like a day after Cinemark did. So I just picked up the first tickets I could. But it looks great. You know, I personally don't watch a lot of 3D movies because I'm not a big fan of the 2D to 3D conversion. In that when I'm watching a movie that was filmed in 2D and then I'm watching it in 3D, the 3D doesn't seem to be that big of a deal, except for like maybe really big action sequence. You notice it, but you don't for anything else. But if you're filmed with the 3D cameras and you've got the camera that points forward and the camera that points down that's reflected, is that what they were using in 2.0?
Yes, we used TheRealWeaZ Digital TS5s, and they are a mirror box arrangement. And the only need for the mirror is the fact that if you put two eyes side by side, you can't bring them any closer together than the width of the cameras. So you have the reflection. One actually bounces off the mirror, the other looks through it. And if you look at the front of it, you can see the eyes come together until they overlap, which is physically impossible, but it's virtually quite practical.
But whenever I've seen a movie filmed with cameras like that, the 3D looks stunning throughout the film instead of just at big moments.
It's just that nobody's going to go to the trouble to convert a field of grass where every blade of grass waving in the wind has its own specific depth. There were actually 2.0 is what's known as a hybrid movie. There are scenes that were shot in native 3D. There are some action sequences that it was not practical to bring the rig. The rig is pretty big and heavy. So there are some shots or stock footage, for example, with all the birds that you see. Some of those images were converted. So it's a hybrid in the sense that it includes several different types of 3D. Some of them are computer generated because the VFX obviously weren't real objects that could be photographed. But as a stereographer, I set the tone for how much depth is appropriate in these shots. I disagree with a lot of the philosophy that is used in converting, that the subject you're looking at should always be at screen plane. That's not the way things are in the real world. If somebody walks from far to near and they're always at screen plane and they get bigger, that doesn't equate with what I experience in real life when somebody comes far away to close. So there are a lot of philosophical differences between how people can convert. But being stereographer on this project and people who had a chance to see what we shot natively, they could imitate that when things needed to be converted.
Yeah, I was impressed with the 3D, and I don't get impressed by 3D that often. So good job.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it. And you said earlier you worked on the U2 3D experience?
Yes. What happened was it's been a long time coming that there are reliable 3D camera systems. And it was about 2007 that some people out in California developed a reliable system. And then they got permission to go and travel with the band U2 on the Vertigo tour through Central and South America and a number of other places. And they shot all that footage. And because of my presence on the internet, because I've had a site since 1995 or so.
Yeah. And I've realized you've never updated it because it looks like it's still from 1995.
Well, that is the archives. If you click the first link there, it'll take you to my professional page, and that's everything I've done between now and then. So I was in the middle of an answer, but now I can't remember the question anymore.
Oh, it was about U2's 3D experience.
Oh, right. Yes. Actually, the company that financed this camera system in California was interested in shooting live sports. The people who invested in this project were owners of an NFL football team, and they wanted to bring that experience home. So to have a camera that's reliable enough, and what I do when I'm on the set, I am actually changing two things about the camera configurations. The distance between the lenses, which we call interaxial or interocular. That spacing changes. If I get close to something, I can't have my eyes this far apart, or I can't converge on a near object without the background getting wider than my head. So I can control the distance. I'm going to a low power mode on my phone. I don't think it's a problem. The distance between the lenses and where they converge in space. And that changes every time an object gets closer to you or something gets farther away, or if you move closer to an object, or if two people are in a shot, requires a different solution each time. So I'm dynamically operating the cameras, and cameras that were designed for sports use are capable of retaining their alignment as you make these changes. A lot of other systems out there don't do it very well, and then you get vertical misalignments or zoom mismatches or rotational differences. Any one of those will give you a headache.
Yeah, it'll make you feel like you're crossing your eyes. Yeah.
Or diverging them, which is even worse.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. That's when I look away.
One up, one down also happens commonly, and you don't want that.
No, when I was a kid, I would see some of those stereograph photos, because it would have two photos next to each other.
Right.
Instead of putting them in the thing, I would just cross my eyes until they aligned up so that I could see the 3D of it. Maybe I was just impatient, but
no, that's a tried and true method. There's parallel viewing and there's cross viewing. And the nice thing about cross viewing is you can have large images and still cross your eyes. You can't diverge them very comfortably.
Yeah, it's just like those magic eye books.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how does a stereographer from Colorado get involved with an Indian movie? The most expensive Indian movie.
It actually came as a surprise to me. What happened was I worked out in Hollywood from 2007 or 2008 to about 2012. And during that time, there was a great deal of interest in 3D, and it started to rise on everybody's awareness. Well, then the reality of it came out that directors and cinematographers don't want a third person standing next to them saying, well, if we change this shot. So they would usually put the stereographer in a corner and say, I'm going to do what I always do, make me look good, which isn't the way you make a good looking 3D image. And very often, honestly, I've been on sets where I'm not allowed to talk to or make eye contact with the director. And that just seems absurd to me. And Hollywood's solution for dealing with the stereography problem was, let's just convert it. Well, it's not the same. And I think Hollywood is complicit in destroying 3D for this round. I mean, it comes out every couple of years. It was big in the 40s and 50s. Then it was big in the 70s for a while. Then it came around one more time, and we had a chance to make it right, and nobody gave it a chance to show what 3D could really do. So I had reached the point. I'm 70 now. I thought, I'm done with this. I'm going home. So I moved back to Colorado, where I've lived since, when did I come here? 79. 72 is the first time I came to Colorado. And I thought, Hollywood isn't really my cup of tea. I'm there to try to show people how to do this. They weren't listening. So I retired and just quit. Now, in the meantime, I had trained a number of people, particularly some very sharp young people who had worked at the camera company with me. And they went on to various countries. So my good friend Marcus, who has been making 3D movies in India for a while, settled down, got married, and was starting a family in Hong Kong. And I got a phone call saying, I signed up for a movie, but I'd rather be home with my wife until she has the baby and then after the baby. And how would you like to come out of retirement and just do a project for me? I thought, no problem. I expected 2 or 3 months. Turned into it was 3 years, and it was a gigantic scope on this movie. So I managed to get wrangled into something that was not what I was expecting at all. But I did like the fact that the director, Shankar, and Nirav Shah, the cinematographer, both wanted to make a proper, natively acquired 3D movie. And I could sit with them on the set, and we could make adjustments right on the spot. So I would say that this was the best opportunity I've ever had to show what 3D can do. And that kept my enthusiasm going in spite of some of the hardships of trying to shoot in India.
Yeah.
There's floods, typhoons, spicy food that's beyond my comprehension. That kind of
Yeah, we like some spicy in Colorado, but some of my Indian friends, they're crazy when it comes to spice. I can't handle it.
It was pretty hot stuff for me.
But that, like, it is nice that, you know, they brought you in. And you could see that if you watch the 3D featurette that they came out with like a year ago that you were in.
Yes.
You can see them, you know, you talking with them and doing stuff with the monitor and sitting there with them as they're doing stuff. You're not, like you said, put in a corner until, you know, they need you. And that is one of the good things about a lot of Indian cinema I've found, is that there is some ego just like anywhere else, but it doesn't seem to get in the way if you need something done. You're willing to collaborate. Well, I really hope that someone in Hollywood will see this and wonder, why does my 3D not look good, but his 3D looks great? Like, what did they do? And then realize if we actually work with the guy that does the 3D, he'll make it look good.
What a concept.
Right.
There are two elements that we use differently or in greater abundance than other shoots that I've seen. One is we used a lot of depth. We can get away with that because these cameras allow for very precise alignment. And as long as the alignments are comfortable, you can handle quite a bit of depth. Your eyes work that way in the real world. And the second thing is we used a lot of negative space, which is things between the screen and the audience, not necessarily throwing things at you or the punch that always happens. Of course, everybody wants that in the theater, and there's some moments of that. But there are other moments that are very dramatic. I don't want to give away any of the plot in case in case there are people who haven't seen this yet. But there are moments where the main characters are halfway between the screen and the audience, and that makes it feel very intimate. And I would say most of the time the audience doesn't know where the image is, but it has an emotional context when you do that. The other thing you mentioned, you're hoping somebody in Hollywood sees this. I'm going to make an announcement right now. I'm going to be presenting this at the Los Angeles 3D Film Festival on Sunday. So there's a chance for some people in Hollywood to get a look at it.
Awesome. That's great. That is awesome. Keep in touch with me. I want to know how that goes.
Okay.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to tell my fans of Indian cinema?
Yes, I want to make sure everybody who hears me in an interview about Indian cinema realizes I know nothing about Indian cinema. What I know about is three-dimensional imaging. And when I discovered Shankar and his wild imagination, I can't think of anything more appropriate than doing that in 3D. At the end of the movie, there is a dance number. It's a 6-minute standalone dance number when they run the credits. And I think it's unfortunate when a 3D movie has to compete with its own subtitles or script running by it. It didn't show that way in India. It showed without any subtitles. But the music video itself, the sets were the most elaborate things I have ever seen. There was one entire sound piece that's deep in water, had boats, and had flowers coming, giant trees with metallic leaves, and everything shimmered and moved. Very elaborate sets, and I think a lot of those details would have been lost if it had only been shot in 2D. So discovering the creativity and the imagination of a director like Shankar and a cinematographer like Nirav, that was very exciting for me. But when people asked me about the history of Indian cinema, I didn't even know the stars that I was working with until I met them on. And it turned out they had the biggest stars from all of these different industries. We had Akshay from Bollywood and Rajinikanth from Chennai. It was just like superstars everywhere. Now, the fun thing for me, I brought my wife for a month. I was there for a long time, so I brought my wife in for 1 month to visit. We spent 2 weeks on the set, and then we went and visited tea plantations in Kerala after that for a break. All the big superstars who everybody would love to get their hands on for an autograph would come in and sit down and talk with my wife between takes. So she was like the recipient of all this adoration from people who everybody in India wants to get close to. But we live near Aspen, so we see a lot of movie stars around here too. And kind of the thrill has worn off to a certain degree.
No, I totally get it. You know, they're human, just like any other person. Well, I want to thank you very much for doing this interview. It's awesome to kind of geek out about photography, and I like hearing the little technical details. A lot of my fans know that. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Links to the video. If you haven't seen the first featurette that they did that had Ray in it, I've put a link in the description below. You can check that out. Also links to his website and all of my stuff. So go down there, check it out. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you on the next video.